So, Steffi said that I should do something like a talk and then a workshop. I'm a scientist, so obviously I will not lead meditation now with you, because I would have loved to have my meditation teachers with you. But I thought what I do is first give you 25 minutes of brain science and of introduction. What are we really doing? You know, how can we train the brain and the heart and do science at the same time? Where does it come from? And then I want to introduce you in a multimedia, freely downloadable ebook, which is an art-science cooperation. Given that here everyone is kind of mixing up field, I thought, you know, it's a cooperation which happened with Olafur Eliasson and on a compassion training workshop in his atelier. And given that it's 900 pages of resources you can use at home, I just wanted to show you a little bit how this works, 10 minutes. So I have my iPad here and I can show you, because it's an artistic book and it's free, so you can't do anything wrong. And then I wanted to go more into detail for the people who are still wanting to stay here. And a lot of people, when I give talks, want to know more about how do we actually do these exercises? How is secular meditation working? What is it exactly what we do in the science? And so I wanted to give you a bit more practical insight of the exercises of the research project, and also get your question. It should be an interactive third part, so that I know what you really want to know. So let me start. So train the mind in compassion. It's from brain plasticity to caring society, I told you, because I want to make a little bit a bridge on how you actually can use the psychological and neuroscientific knowledge to work towards a more caring society. So I'm working with economists together on new models of economy. And so bear with me. I hope that at the end you will see how it bridges all together. So perhaps first you will ask, what am I working in? I'm working in a field which is called social neuroscience. It's very young, and it's answering questions like, you know, it's not wanting to understand a single brain in isolation and behavior, but it wants to ask, how do we actually know other people, what they feel, what they think? How can we communicate? How do we do that? It's actually a very difficult question in science to track. How do I know what you feel? I'm not you. Yeah? And so this is social neuroscience, and topics like empathy, compassion, and mindfulness have not been at all the focus of research in hardcore neuroscience. And in the last, since 2000, you see that peer-reviewed, you know, like serious scientific journal and peer-reviewed journal, on the topic of intervention like mindfulness, consciousness, empathy, and compassion has exponentially, you know, grown. So it's an explosion which the world sees. And you see, like, for example, the first empathy paper, which I did in London, was 2004. And after that, neuroscience started looking at these more kind of social phenomena. How do I share feelings with others? But it's a very new field. So we are really at the beginning of understanding that. It's not an old field. But you know, in Germany, the Spiegel, for example, picked up on it recently. There's a lot of interest. And I think it's to do with the shift in consciousness that people have realized these kind of egoistic, individualized, separated being mode is not working anymore. And so there is a huge interest, and there are a lot of books now coming out. Mathieu Ricard, I will talk about him because we scanned his brain a lot in a minute. And it's about, for example, the empathic brain. How does it work? Or Jeremy Rifkin's empathic civilization. Pathological altruism. There is more and more books coming out on this topic. So it's not something you have to hide yourself anymore. When I started working this field, it wasn't considered like memory or a vision, or so was considered really like serious science, but these kind of funny social emotions, motivations was a bit, you know, but now we know we can measure it as much as the other things. So this book I will introduce, you know, later. This is this kind of compassion. It's 900 pages on how you actually can cultivate these qualities of the heart and the mind, and I will also talk about the workshop later. So, you know, and I have little flyers if you want to know the web page where to download this book. It's free. We all worked for free for that. It will pass around, so you will take it home. So perhaps you might ask now, how does neuroscientists can approach such question? How can we measure it? How do we do it? So social neuroscience has started with a very fundamental question, and is like, how do we actually understand the other? And which brain circuitry are existent in supporting our capacity to tune into others, understand their minds, but also what they feel. And they have identified, you could say, 2 different routes to the understanding of other people. That's schematically, the red one is an affective, emotional, motivational route. And the green one, which is called theory of mind or cognitive perspective taking, is more a cold route, is like something which psychopaths have. Psychopaths are missing the empathic, emotional route of empathy and compassion, but they know exactly what the other needs. They know how to read the minds of others, but they can't feel for the other. They don't do that. They can do it, but they don't. So these routes are different, and I will now tell you how we measure all these different components. So we are beyond the time where empathy just means something about the other, but we know exactly about all these different phenomena and how they can interact. So the 2 routes, for example, these kind of more affective resonance, it's like being in an emotional resonance with someone else, is sharing the feeling of another, is relying on brain circuitry, the insula especially, which are developing very early and which are actually the seed of me knowing what I feel. We call it interoceptive cortex. And the cognitive perspective route, the cold route to understanding the other, is relying on a circuitry which is more parietal prefrontal, and also in evolution developed much later, and also in ontogeny, in children 3-4 years of age, whereas empathic resonance is there very early on birth. So they are different, not just conceptually, but also biologically. And then I brought you some movie to understand what emotion contagion is. So one which I particularly like, especially when it's late in the day, you had lots of talks, is laughing contagion. So these are quadruple twins. And then they stop, and then all over again it starts.
Daddy's gonna make you laugh now. Ready?
Okay, I have to go here. So that's, in a way, a nice example because you get contagion into happiness. But we did also research which is very relevant to nowadays society, and that's called stress contagion. And what you can show is if you get stressed, you have a hormonal response of cortisol. Now, if we measure people who are in the presence of someone else being stressed, and they are not stressed to begin with, just passively watching. So I will tell you what we have designed for programs to actually work against the epidemic of stress diseases and burnouts, which is, going around. But let me first tell you how we measure empathy. So empathy is the ability to share a feeling with another. So it's not good or bad, it's not moral. When you are suffering pain, and we put pain on people in the scanner, we measure the brain of the person really having pain, feeling the pain, and compare these brain networks with what you see in terms of brain network activated if you only know that another gets pain. So you're not feeling anything, you are in a neutral state and someone else is suffering, and what we can see is that you activate the very same brain regions which process your own feeling of pain just by resonating with the pain of another. And it's unconscious. So you couldn't ask someone, is your insula firing up? It's in a millisecond range. And that means that we are much more interdependent with each other than we are aware. We are processing every second what other people are going through, and we are not even aware of it. But we are all interconnected. That's the message, basically. Okay, so that was like the early days. We understood how empathy works. A lot of labs around the world have now a lot of evidence for this kind of basic principle that I'm automatically, rather quickly going into an emotional resonance with other people, whether that's joy or suffering. And I thought at that time, okay, let's train it. If that's something good, morally, it's subserving cooperation, it's something making people more prosocial, let's go the next step and enter into training research, plasticity research, we call it. So can we alter the brain? Can we train our even adult brain to become more empathic? And throughout my research, I understood that empathy is a nice thing, but this is not what you want to train. You want to train it in people who don't have it, like psychopaths, but you don't want to have too much of it. What you really need is compassion. And most of the people also in dictionaries and so don't do a difference between empathy and compassion. And I'll show you data which bring home that it couldn't be more different. So perhaps put in a nutshell, empathy is just I resonate with you. Now, if you are really stressed or suffering, I can get so stressed that at the end I'm stressed too. This is it's absolutely not helpful for the other because you're not really, you say, go away, I don't want to see your depressed face anymore or something, like happens a lot in couples. And it's not very helpful. It's not like, you are really concerned with this person. And compassion is really much more rooted in the system of affiliation and love. So it's a positive feeling of strength and real concern about the other. It's very different. And I tell you a little story. How did we came about to understand that? How is science working? And this is where a new field comes in. It's contemplative science. It's the reunion of learning from Buddhist monks, from people who have thousands of hours of meditation training in compassion, and learning how do the signature of compassion looks like in these guys who are real expert, who have done that more than 30,000 hours in their life of practice, of generating compassion and fursorge. And so Mathieu Ricard, who is now really a friend, he has written a lot of best-selling books. I am sure some of you might know him. And he was a molecular biologist before he became a monk, a Buddhist monk. So he knows science and he knows the contemplative tradition of the East. So he is a wonderful person. And this is Mingyur Rinpoche in the lab. We call him the Mozart of meditation because he can produce states of consciousness, which for us is like, it's like seeing a rocket going on the moon for scientists. It's really like such a well-trained brain that you can really understand something. And I get my guinea pigs through an association through the Mind and Life Institute, which was funded by Francisco Varela 20 years ago. And the Dalai Lama is very active in that. And it brings together people from Eastern tradition with Western scientists, quantum physicists. Zeilinger, who spoke yesterday, were there, people who work on psychology. And that was a conference we organized in Zurich on compassion and economic system. And that was just after the banking crisis. So at that time, people were like, what? Compassion and economy? I mean, are you kidding? But that was actually a really good conference and the start for a lot of more research into combining these kind of prosocial concepts with economic models. This is a funny, I don't know, it's like a spotting. Where is Tania? So in terms of gender question, these are 10,000 monks. And in January, we went there with some Western scientists and most of the big monastic and philosophical schools to introduce, for the first time since 600 years, Western science teaching into these schools. So it was a bit like if in America, Obama would put together all the Ivy League college and decide about introducing mental training into university. This is a pendant, but in the other way. But we are not there yet, So what we learned from Mathieu was that whenever he went into this compassionate state and we saw the brain signature, it was not looking like empathy at all. He didn't suffer. He was not activating this kind of pain network or alarm system, but he was activating this network which you can see in love and reward and positive feeling, opiate system. So I asked him when he came out, what are you doing? Are you indifferent to the suffering of this? We showed videos. And he was like, no, but compassion is not empathy. It's not suffering with someone. It's a real concern about the other, and a real strength and warm feeling, a bit like a mother would care about a crying child. If a child cries, the mother cries, the child will cry even more. So this caring affiliative system, what it does naturally is soothing the child, getting calm, and pouring out this concern and love. That's basically what he's activating. And so we started, that's just one brain and perhaps a bit special. He's not the random, And so we did a lot of studies with people like you and me. Never meditated, absolutely no idea about all that. And then they did 1 week, and we wanted to see whether we could train compassion and empathy, and whether this would result in brain plasticity, in changes in the brain in very different networks, like we had seen it with Mathieu, but we wanted to make real science now with it. And so, like in science, always you need a control group. So another group did memory training, mental, cognitive training, and the other practiced loving kindness and compassion. And then they were exposed to BBC news videos, the suffering of the world, which we are exposed every day when we watch TV. It's usually activating an alarm network when we are flooded with images of suffering in the world. And they had to say, how they feel about that. After 1 week only of compassion and loving kindness training, they felt actually not just this kind of stress and negative emotion, but they activated this kind of positive affiliative network and felt feeling of warmth, positive emotions, and strength, even though they were still bombarded with suffering. So it is a method which can bring about resilience. And it's a win-win situation in a way. Yeah. So then we did this very important study, training one person in empathy, and then a week later, then we measured the brain, and a week later in compassion. And here you see, after empathy training, the area, you don't have to know the area, just believe me, these are the areas which are in empathy for pain. So it's what we saw hundreds of times before. When you are not trained, you are going into empathic resonance, you suffer with the other. But after compassion training, the very same person activated a completely different brain network, which is here marked in red, which is this affiliative, rewarding compassion network. And that was astonishing because it was within the same person just after another training. And they reported also that after empathy training, they felt like, I think a lot of, we have a big problem in healthcare professions and caring professions. People, huge burnout rates and suicide rates, also among anesthetists and surgeons and doctors, but also firefighter and everyone who has to deal with stress of others. And the problem is that they usually go in empathy and don't know how to transform that in compassion, or you get cynical. You suppress, but that's it's not a way out either. It's not curing patients if you get cynical and distant. So that was really promising. And what we could also see, I just do it now shortly, is that actually it increases prosocial behavior in economic games. So we're using these kind of game theoretical economic games, computer games, to measure in the lab your propensity to help others. It's in a very unconscious, implicit way. And what we could see is the memory training didn't do anything, but after 1 week of compassion, you had a more social, outgoing attitude. What we could also show is that generating compassion, if you can do it, is actually pain analgesic. So it reduces pain, probably because it activates an opiate system, which is the best painkiller. So it activates a biological system, which is connected with oxytocin and opiates, which in turn is known to be good against pain. It's reducing pain. But you have to, so these were experts, and they showed a lot of pain analgesia. If you only train it 1 day, if you're not used to compassion, you don't really know how to do it. Our society focuses very much on negative. We can put people in the scanner, say, produce fear, they do it in a millisecond. But if we ask people, could you say in the scanner and produce love, they look at you and like, this happens to us, but I can't produce, how, but you can. I mean, it's just the other side, yeah? So in some, these kind of mental training, plasticity research in the domain of mindfulness, compassion, has shown that you can actually really change your habits and your wiring and your way how you feel and you approach world already just through a week. It doesn't change your brain yet. It's just kind of you have learned a new strategy to approach world, but it increases well-being. And there are other labs in Emory in America who show that it can decrease stress and the level of cortisol. So that was really promising, and we had not expected to see that actually. We were more skeptical then. So it's always good if in science things work really out well. And so it led us to develop the resource project. And the resource project is 9 months, is the largest project of this sort in the world. And instead of just having a week or 8 weeks, like mindfulness-based stress reduction programs, there are 8 weeks, this is 9 months. And this goes far beyond just, these little exercises of either loving kindness or mindfulness, but also, you could say, have elements in it which train wisdom and a perspective of life which helps you understand other people better and yourself, like aspects of yourself. And if people want to stay, I can tell about the exercises we have developed in the workshop later, so that because it's, you need to go into the concrete details of the exercise to understand what you do. But so this is this kind of 1 year, and this is 100 of our participants sitting in a retreat with us at the beginning of a module, and we started in April last year, and people told me this study is crazy. I mean, after 4 weeks, you will have nobody of the 200 people because they have to do half an hour mental training every day, once a week, 2 hours with the teachers, and every 3 months before a module start, they have to go in retreats. And after 9 months, we have less than 6% dropout. So that's revolutionary for this kind of intervention research. And for us, it's already rewarding because we are like, perhaps you don't even need science anymore. I mean, if the people do this and they are tested heavily, and they just stick and they really continue doing it, and the group is forming more and more together, there is something beneficial about it, even before having measured it. So we are really, very thankful. So that is what I will explain a bit later. This is the resource model of training compassion, not just as a fleeting emotion or motivation, but as a view on the world. It's a mindset. It's more than just a nice feeling. And so first we just bring, what I noticed on this conference, usually I'm not on this conference, everyone has cell phones, laptops, iPads, and they're always online. Always, every second people are chatting with 3 other people, even at dinner in the evening. So that's digital life. And it is the opposite of what we train here, presence. So I think it is good, and it is very, very dangerous too, because it can make your mind so busy and so not here that you are never really in the moment where you are right now. You are like in the past, already in the future, chatting with 3 people, getting something in the brain, but you are not here. So the first 3 months, what we do is simple exercises to bring people here into the presence. And this brings the mind down. It calms down this kind of, we call it monkey mind, this busy chatting mind. And so this is necessary to actually afterward go into different modules where you are working more on opening either your heart and working with difficult emotions, anger, stress, or gaining a perspective on who you are. It's a very old question, who am I? So that's the resource project, and I will tell you in a minute about that. These are the exercises they do every day. So we don't only do meditation alone, but we have developed what we call contemplative diet. So you call someone up every day, 10 minutes. It's like teeth brushing together. It's not long, but it has a big effect. But before I go into the more practical and question part of this, I just want to show you how we try to bridge the gap between this microcosmos of psychology and brain science, which is, at the end, a person, and economy. So we have a cooperation going on with macroeconomists and the Institute for New Economic Thinking, which is an institute which tries to work out new models for economy. It's just gathering new ideas for how economy could work different than what we do now. And Dennis Noor is my macroeconomist. He's a mathematician and the president of the Institute for World Economy. And we came together and thought, we have both the same goal. We both want to work towards solving something like problems like that, global problems. It's like on the more macroeconomics, there's pollution, financial crisis, resource depletion. On the more psychological level is increasing stress, burnout, and an increased perception of loneliness of people. We are more connected than ever, and people feel lonely. And subjectively felt loneliness is the best predictor for mortality. So it's not just a wishy-washy subjective thing which we measure, it's a real good health indicator. And so it matters that people start again getting out of their me ego bubble, and we experience a feeling of interconnectedness with each other, but perhaps the real interconnectedness, not, if I have 2,000 friends on Facebook, is not opening my heart. It's a number on my left side of my, it's not really interconnecting with people. So we're asking, how can we get there, and how can psychology and neuroscience actually help inform new models? We need new models of, Homo economicus, that's a simplistic sketch, but the funny thing is you find this, exactly this, in every textbook, which graduate students from micro and macroeconomics have to learn in the whole world. So it's not a comic, it's not a persiflage. And so, the idea here is if we cooperate, we do financial choices, I have beliefs about the other, but the belief can only be updated when I see the revealed behavior of someone, having done an interaction. That's the only way I can know about you. And I have these preferences, whatever that is, but they are very important for all the models. And the preferences are context independent, they are fixed, they stay here, they come from somewhere, and they can certainly not change. They are context independent, endogenously given. This is standard textbook economy, and it is important because macroeconomists have difficulties modeling more complex interaction. But this couldn't be more far from what is reality. So, I showed you we have emotion contagion. I showed you we have empathy. I showed you this is all biological existence. This is not just, it's valid data. Okay, so that means we don't have to go through choices to know about other people's preferences. We know, so the state of the other every millisecond in a negotiation is influencing my own states and will change my behavior, whether I want it or not. So we, in psychology, don't call it preferences, we call it motives, motivational system. No behavior without motivation. There is not a single textbook in economy where the word motivation is discussed. Motivation is not existing, but motivation is everything. So in psychology, we know that, for example, you can be motivated by power and status. This will give a very different behavior than if you have another motivational system active, which is achievement. And again, it is very different than if you are in the alarm system, threat. Yeah? Threat can either lead to anger or fear, but they both come from alarm system. And if this biological alarm system is very strongly activated, you will also have the HPH axis activated, which is leading to stress and chronic stress to illness. So there is another system which is as old as human being could be, and every rat has it, because sometimes I think the male under the audience, they think, oh, this compassion thing is something for women, and it's for mothers who care about their children, but it doesn't have anything to do with economy and serious stuff. But actually, every man and every animal and rat has a caring affiliative system that's as old as a threat system and necessary for surviving, because you wouldn't have any bonding and any relationships to others, and trust is coming from that. And you can activate it through oxytocin paths, for example, and you will see that people trust more in economic games. So it transfers to real life and to everyday life. So motivation is really driving your behavior. Given that this is a fact, we better know which motivation system is actually driving our behavior and how we can change within or the institutional design to actually promote not only being captured in achievement, wanting more and more and more, but also sometimes in caring and affiliative, because that's a system which will promote sustainable behavior and cooperative behavior, just because this is what it does. It's a function. So motivations instead of preference. We have a loop. I don't go over that because this is too complex, but believe me, it's more difficult even than that, because it's all about how we construct and appraise the world. And depending on how we think, whether you are in-group or out-group member, I will activate compassion, empathy, or the reverse, Schadenfreude and revenge. And we can show that in the lab. I can put each of you into a situation where in 1 second you have empathic responses in the brain and you act prosocially in games later. Next second, I tell you this is an out-group member, it's not part of your group. Whoa, empathic signal down, Schadenfreude up, and no helping. So it's really, it's just like how we are. We have potential for both. Now the question is, how do you activate which intention and which system to which time? So in this kind of caring economics, we are working towards first getting better model of how to activate internally and through institutional design, through education, mental training, secular mental training, but also through institutional design, the caring affiliative system, rather than always being in a loop between achievement and fear, which is a bit the problem of our societies right now. We have developed a bit too much into, it's not that one is better than the other, it's just about a balance, and we are a bit out of balance, I would say. So, so it's about getting this shift back. Okay, so that was basically the first part to show you a little bit how these fields all come together. And if people are now tired or need a breath, you can you can leave now. Now I thought I would present you the compassion book and just tell you how it works and where you can find it, and because there is a lot of more knowledge. And then for the people who are interested in the meditation exercises and the project itself, like how does it work, what do we do with the people, I might take a question and talk a bit more about that later. Thank you. Okay, so this is the book. I think you have the web page, the web link on these flyers, which are perhaps somewhere, I hope. And so how does this book came about? Before we started developing this 1-year training program, mental training program, we were gathering all the people in the world which had actually either trained compassion throughout their life as coaches or monks or meditation scholars or whatever. And I met the artist Olafur Eliasson. And he was about to work on a project for the Olympic Games in London and was really interested in felt feeling, empathy. How can we share feelings with a big community? And so I told him, listen, there are all these compassion experts and scientists and practitioners coming together anyway because I bring them together. So why not doing a science art evening? And he said, why a science art evening? You can do the whole thing in my atelier. He has a beautiful space in Berlin. And so we ended up, all these funny mix of people in an art atelier with all this beautiful three-dimensional, like spheres which Olafur is building and light sculptures. And after these 4 magic days, we were all saying we need to share that somehow with society. We can't just do it for us. It was so magic and so good. So we all started to say, what could we do? We don't have an editor in the background. We don't want to do the classical one-man show book. We present the heterogeneity of voices and people present, the artistic part of this workshop. And we want to give the secular training program on compassion to the world. We want to share it. We don't want to have it only in our labs. And so we ended up to have this book, which is 2 years later. Everyone worked for free, so it's a rather compassionate gift to people. So you can download it or just web stream it or PDF it. And if you don't like it, you have not spent a penny, so it doesn't matter. And there are 4 columns. One is experience with training compassion. It's this kind of yellow column. And it's more like, teachers explaining how do we apply these secular compassion training programs in schools. Or how do we help teachers to overcome stress with teaching them these methods. Or how can we work in clinics with, clinician stuff with that? Or businesses. And then there is a bit more definitional part. And then there is, for example, a science part. And what I can show you just how it looks. The book is really nice because you see these pictures here. Is all pictures from Olafur Eliasson, and he included them into the book. And what you also see, there are like these kind of sound collages interspersed in the middle, like here.
What is compassion?
So this is
okay,
Olafur,
so let's just remind ourselves, why do we...
Anyway, so you can click and you get a feeling of how this workshop was, what were the questions, how do the people talk. So you're a bit like back into the room. Then we have all these art pieces of Olafur. And then what you also have is like, for example, if you go here, because I showed you Mathieu, I go to this one. The 3rd column is about the science of compassion. And so here, for example, you can click on Mathieu, and he will speak from the workshop about the concept.
Empathic concern for a need of someone. A need of someone who is in need and who you see that need, and then therefore you feel that you want to.
Okay, so you get the idea. You have like these kind of multimedia element and artistic elements throughout the whole book. And at the very end, I don't know who of you is like, working on education or other things. You have all the secular training program, 8-week programs, and also the resource protocol in the back, in this green section. And there are, for example, sometimes meditation. So, for example, if you're interested, how does this kind of heart meditation works? I would like to hear it once. You can just click on this sound file and then you will have, a short version of it. This is not replacing any program and not replacing teachers. But it gives you a hint, you can start explore this world around this topic, yeah? And what we also did is to shoot some, we were an artist atelier with all these video people, and so we shoot conversation, and on the webpage there is a 40 minutes documentary which is called Raising Compassion, or Conversation Around Compassion, and you see some of the workshop experts discoursing and talking about why compassion? For what is it good for? It's a bit like an artistic collage. So it's not, we had not planned anything of that. This was all post hoc. It was all made basically after the workshop took place. And but this movie gives you also an introduction, and it's for free. You can web stream it, and it's all available on this page. So please, if you like it, spread the word. We did it for you guys. So it's like. And so now I would perhaps, before I go into, das ist jetzt wieder hier. Also hier? Yeah. So before I go into perhaps, this kind of resource project, what are the exercises, what are we doing, what are the modules, I would love to hear a little bit from you the question you have so that I can, because we have 20 minutes left. So I want to also, know what your question is and perhaps get your question, and then I can answer them a bit more, while I'm speaking. So, yeah. Do we have a...
My question is, where does it lead us to? The research project is one of those with Kiel, which you mentioned, and by INET. I'm very proud to be a governing board member of INET, and that we decided for the project and to fund it. Yeah. And it started actually off with the neoclassics and the fault ideas of the rational expectation hypothesis and the market equilibrium hypothesis and all this. And the second remark is, you find in early works of our economists, you find the phrase empathy.
Yes.
Very much so with Adam Smith in the book which he always considered his most important book, which was not The Wealth of Nations, but on moral sentiments. Mm-hmm. And similar in the book of his best friend, David Hume, the treatise on a treatise on human nature. Yes. So, is this a way of going redefining or reloading some of these early stages of economies, where Adam Smith on his tombstones is not an economist, is Adam Smith, professor for moral philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very thankful for this remark, because when I read Adam Smith, I thought I would read, all about utilitarianism, self-interest, the invisible hand, and then I read, of course, the moral sentiments, because that was more close to my heart, and I found all kind of chapters saying about fellow feelings. He didn't call it empathy, but fellow feelings about the intrinsically rewarding nature of cooperation with others, which doesn't need any utility for yourself because it's intrinsically rewarding. This couldn't be closer to what we work. The thing is that in economy it has been completely forgotten. It's not there anymore. They always cite, it's a bit like with Darwin. Darwin is seen as someone who has, postulated the selfish gene and the egoism and the self-interest. It's not true. If you read really his texts, he had also a balanced view on human nature and especially animals. So in a way you could say, yes, you hardly ever reinvent completely new, but over the last decades, the narrative of Western civilization and world has been very, very much influenced by Homo economicus, if people know it or not. I think most politicians in their decision-making are not aware anymore that the implicit picture which is guiding their choices, is actually still the picture of Homo economicus, who is mostly self-interested, who doesn't know about what other people need and feel, and who is not interconnected, but who is selfish, and that's the only thing how you can... And in psychology, selfishness is not even a motive. It's coming later, but it's not a motive per se. And so I think, we feel... This is old knowledge in psychology, but it has not been bridged to macroeconomic model, to policy making, and to politics, and this is what we try. So we are putting computation into old knowledge to come up with a new theory of macroeconomic decision making, but which is this time, basing on real findings in biology and human nature and psychology. So that's the aim. It's a big one. but, we start doing first steps with your help. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, is it really forgotten? I mean, Adam Smith, as moral philosopher, is not forgotten in modern economies, and every merchant will tell you at once that he is the more successful, the better he is able to cooperate with other people. And so Homo politicus is not man's wolf. Homo politicus and successful in business means to be compassionate and means to tend to others and help others being successful.
But you don't have models. We have made a big theoretical reviews, and there are what you call social preference model on fairness. They're existing, and they come from microeconomics. If you go on economic, research, normal academic meeting from American, Economic Association, you find it's 0.1% is experimental microeconomics, and 0.001% of them are postulating fairness preferences, something like warm glow and things like that. There is not a single model yet having in their equation compassion-based caring motivation, not a single one. Fairness is very different, is more close to justice and inequity aversion, and is not compassion. They are two very distinct things. Both promote cooperation, they are very different motives. And so I think there is a lot of work to do. Even though, of course, from our gut feeling, we know that it works. But we need to show it, in terms of a model, yeah.
Presentation and fantastic research. I honestly think this should be taught at business schools, and it should be part of economics classes. And what are your plans on sort of commercializing the knowledge that comes out of this research project? What are your thoughts on this, and what kind of help would you need? And because we need to make sure that this reaches students, society, and that it has the real impact that I think this can potentially have.
So thank you. I think too, I'm a researcher, so, commercializing thing is not my best, I don't really know how to do it, but what we are thinking now, like the resource project is such a success story so far. It has been now still, it's a scientific study, but what it shows is that actually you can change social preferences. You can change the outlook you have on the world to a more cooperative society. So there is really, you don't have to be a child. You can do it as an adult, where, usually people say brain plasticity is decreasing after 25. So we have a lot of questions of people asking, could we implement these secular mental training programs, science-based secular mental, into schools, into education, into business? At the moment, I'm a Max Planck Director Research Institution, but we are thinking of creating an institute where the secular ethic program, and I know in America similar endeavors have been started, can be actually implemented in schools, because, if there's some people, I don't know. I don't think we need a lot, because we have the program, we have the teacher, we have the science, we have everything, but I think we need something where it seed. This is how it's called, seed money. So whatever that means, we have now branded, and so we try to get it into society because we think there is a huge demand. I get 10 emails per day of schools, teachers, people asking, where can we get that? And this is why we did the book as a first step, but obviously you need to implement that more. So that's on the mental training part. For the caring economics part, we hope that if we have published this paper, if it's more ripe, this should be taught really into, I'm happy to come and teach, or we are working with economists, real economists together, so they should perhaps teach. I can teach the psychology and neuroscience part, but I think it is really, really important to change the narrative in the business schools and because that's where the young people learn the models, and the narrative is just possibly wrong. It's not right, it's just you really need to update it. So we know about that, and I think we scientists need the help of you applied guys to put it into society, because that's not what we do best. So, but thank you. So
Is it my turn or? Yeah. Yeah, I'm over here. Tania.
Here, okay.
Yeah, just wanted to touch on that, being part of a generation. I'm an economist myself, and I can only confirm that it's not the matter that the knowledge of what Adam Smith was saying, or also others, is not present. It's just not being taught anymore at university.
Active, yeah.
And I think in the last years, even now in Germany, there is a debate of, why do we have these kind of crises that we're experiencing? Because you have our generation that has been brought up in make believe that that's the right paradigm, to be homo economicus. But there is, I don't know if you heard about him, Otto Scharmer from the MIT.
Yes, we are working together with him.
That is doing a lot of work on theory U, so it's very interesting.
This is also, we're working with him together. He's a great guy.
And my question was, what kind of practical thoughts you have to introduce that into the university curriculum, but even at a later stage within companies to educate people on...
In this thing,
yes.
It's actually a decision. You see the programs, the programs are there. They are there. We just need to refine them or make it, suitable for the different things. So it's actually, I think it's just bringing policymaker, educationists together with us. And there is a huge, I say us, it's not just me. We have done this long 9 months with very different modules, which goes beyond mindfulness. But already just 8 weeks of mindfulness is better than nothing, because it brings you back to the very core motivation of your humanity. And so it's just a decision, just do it. So, we just need to bring the right people together and do it and implement it, because there is nothing harmful about it, It's not like we need clinical trial to make sure that this drug is not working. And this is why we do science too, is to have science-based evidence programs, which can help. But I don't want to say that this is the only answer. Institutions need to change too. But when the people have recontacted this kind of other potential, they change their institution, because you see it's crazy what we do. So they start doing it in terms of redesigning institution from itself. So, yeah.
Hi, Tania. So my name's Tania. I'm the founder of Shareably, and we measure people's interactions with the social web. So I'm fascinated about a potential application of what you were saying when it comes to sort of transferring emotion. This may not be something you've looked at, but do you believe that concept of mirroring the emotions that you observe in people, is that reliant on being physically present or sight, sound and motion, or is that something that could also happen potentially over the web or via email or social messaging?
It can completely happen over the web, as long as you have some channels, a talk or emoticon or voice, or so emotions get transmitted not just by face or but you have lots of subconscious channels how you pick up stress. So we did this stress contagion study. So even through a mirror or through the TV, just by blushing of the cheeks, you pick up stress. You don't have to talk, really. So the web is also, the less channels you have, the less you will have this contagious effect. The more you have, the more it will just, blow,
Makes you think very carefully about what you watch as well on television or film or something. Thank you.
Television is changing our plasticity. It's like a microsurgery every time we watch it. This is how neuroscientists see it, yeah.
Okay, my mind is blown now. I'm going to stop.
I have a question. My name is Sabrina Fox. As we were talking about compassion, I cannot watch movies or anything because I feel exactly what is there, considering it's good acting, of course. But there are people like my daughter who can see stuff that I can even be near the room. Mm-hmm. What is the difference, or how did you?
First, there are personality difference at birth. Yeah, there are children who are just more sensitive and contagious and empathic than others. This is just individual difference. We always have that. And then there is also habituation effect. If you are exposed to brutality again and again and again, it's a bit like doctors. At the beginning, they're overwhelmed by seeing someone dying, but then, given they are not educated in compassion, if you're really trained into compassion practice, you don't have to shut down to survive, but you can stay with your heart open, flow compassion and you will not burn out. So this is why it's so powerful. But we are not trained to do that, and our biological response is to shut down when someone is suffering or has violence or so. Oh, really? That's interesting. We should scan you. I don't know that one. Okay. Yeah, so perhaps you have a professionalized way of coping with empathy in your profession where you don't use this, when you're, but that's a specific thing, yeah. Are there some, here and then behind us.
Hi, so Eric Hall from the Association of Neuroaesthetics. I just have a question, because we did a nice symposia on the work of Tina Segal in the Venice Biennale. And so the work, I don't know if you're familiar with Tina Segal, but it's all about empathy. And what I'm curious about, if you did also measurement on pieces of art. So when you work together with Olafur Eliasson, if you measured what happened in the brain, or what would be, of course, wonderful, as you explained earlier, if you have a long-term measurement over the months or by continuously watching a piece of art. So just the question about measurement.
There is a research field, we don't do neuroaesthetics, but there is a research field called neuroaesthetics, and they look at these things like, aesthetic appreciation, how does the brain, process aesthetics, all this, this kind of feeling, that's beautiful or that's ugly. But you see, I think most of the people who hear brain, they think you can just go in a scanner, be scanned, and then we have a signature. That's not true. It's not so easy. It's quite a difficult field to work with. You need to find the right task and the right question which makes sense. And so before we scan people, we really want to know that it's worthwhile. And neuroaesthetics very early, so there is also a lot of so it's with Olafur, the interest is more to bridge the gap where we can really foster each other and inspire each other, and that was through the different approaches which artists have and scientists, but wanting to answer the same question. How do we get people more cooperative? How do we work towards a global society? How can we overcome discrimination between in-group, out-group? And he works with his art piece on that same question, and we work with this kind of work. So.
And it's also hard to do that in the art space, right? So, and it's a question of the money as well.
And what you really ask, the question you ask, So I think here there were lots of...
Tania, back here. In the very back on the right, or on your left. Back here.
Here, sorry.
So I come from Silicon Valley. And,
okay.
There's a number of us young entrepreneurs between the ages of 20 and 30. And when we're first starting out, the one thing I hear consistently is what an emotional roller coaster it is. How the highs are and how low the lows are.
Yeah.
And as these entrepreneurs become more and more seasoned, the consistent trend seems to be that the word that describes them is unflappable, right? They're like a very calm lake. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if this...
Are they happy?
Yes, for the most part, they're very, very friendly people, considering how low the success rate is. It's surprising how many of these people are burnt out, essentially.
Are burning out.
Are not burning out.
Are not burning out, okay.
So I'm wondering if my theory here is because you're building a new product where you have to talk to customers on a regular basis, you essentially have to be very compassionate for 6 hours a day. If us programmers are in our garages are doing a very crude form of what these monks in the mountains are doing, by making ourselves more compassionate and in turn becoming a little bit more emotionally stable and being a more collaborative society out there.
I would have to investigate them, to know whether they really grow more compassionate or not. I don't know. I'm happy to hear that they're not burning out, because that's, in this high stress profession, it's getting a real problem. And, I wouldn't be so sure. A lot of people are not telling you. But we psychologists have them in our clinics, so it's still something, which people don't like to talk about because it's a sign of weakness or something doing wrong. So, the hidden numbers are quite big. So I'm not sure, whether perhaps there are some also having, troubles with, but it might be that through their profession they learn it and become, this kind of Buddha nature where things just flow through. Would be great. Should visit you in Silicon Valley. I can just tell you in science it's not like this. It's a very competitive, high-stress environment. Yeah.
Tania, hi, my name is Johannes Fricke-Waldhausen from DLD Arts. I have 2 questions regarding, I understand there's not so much time left now, and please answer which one is more relevant to you at the moment. One is regarding the content of the research project, the methodology, whether you could say something to that, the more practical implication when you do it, applied. And the other one is there, how do you bring this more to society, or is there more an institutionalized way where people could learn on the practice of research project, and what would you need for that? I guess it has to do with finances too.
Okay, so the second part is a bit like the question I answered
like Eric,
before.
yeah, picking up from what you said.
I'm apologizing. I had a whole workshop prepared, but somehow the time flew so quickly. And in this workshop, I actually wanted to show you which exercises we do. Yeah, the content. And but now, I think the time is running out. So if I would go into that, it would probably take me a while. But perhaps I can just hint at that. So each person is first going through a period of stabilization of the mind. So if you have never trained your mind and you're unfamiliar, you first have to sit, and this is, people know it under the keyword of mindfulness or Achtsamkeit, so you just learn to sit and to familiarize you with what is going on inside. And so the breathing, and then you also need to stabilize your attention. We have all a kind of attention deficit disorder here because people are just too busy. So, even if it's not diagnosed, we all have a bit of the same problem. And so when you sit first, you think you get crazy because you hear now your mind talking because you get conscious about it. And so you are like, okay, first you need to learn how to just come back to your breathing and just stabilize your mind and get body awareness. What do I feel? What is going on in my body? So this is 3 months. It's the basis. It's like without that, you can't really work. And then there come another module which is called affective. And that's to do with opening your heart and developing loving kindness and this kind of self-compassion. So what you do here is to activate actually the system I showed you before, which is this kind of affiliative caring system. And for example, mothers usually they use the picture, the inner picture of their child to activate the system when they are beginners. Because, when you think about your child, like opening the arms and laughing, this is this moment where you're like, oh, like it just goes up. But other people have, their grandma or the mothers. In the West, mothers are a bit different. In the old tradition, you have to imagine your mother as being the symbol of caring and, But in the Western world, this doesn't work so much. This freaks out half of the people. So they usually take other images where it's easy to feel this kind of benevolent. And then you slowly enlarge this kind of loving kindness, this kind of benevolence to people you don't know, the baker, the postman, and then you enlarge it to in-group, then to out-group, to people you find difficult. Then there is all kind of work in the week 7 about forgiveness, because a lot of people have crunches with their families or really important person, and as long as you don't do forgiveness work, there is a block about compassion. And another element, and we train that in what we call contemplative diets. We have designed a web platform where all the participants can then, like in Facebook, connect on the web. And so you get one partner every week with whom you do these contemplative diets. So it's only 10 minutes. One is listening and is empathically, so it's not talking, it's not nodding, or, like what we usually do when we talk is chit-chatting is, oh, I know that, I had the same thing, and poof, you are not with the other anymore. It's about you. And then the other is interrupting you again and saying, me, and this is how we dialogue, And so the contemplative dialogue is trying to actually really be present, hold the space, listen 5 minutes without any comment. It's really being there for the other. So that's a super exercise for us. And it sounds silly, but it's difficult. You know, and if you manage to do it, it's so relaxing. Because it's the first time you really listen. And then the other, he is talking about what was difficult and about gratitude and thankfulness. And to do that every day, 10 minutes. At the beginning, people tell us, I can't, you know, I don't even know this person. I mean, they are in my group, but, you know, I will not tell him so much private stuff. And you know, to make rendezvous every week, every day with someone, you know, this is crazy. After 1 week, they addicted. It's like really, you know, like it's like you want to do your diet because it gives you the space in the day where you get conscious about what's actually happening with you, and you're practicing also gratitude, which is it's the seed of compassion too, gratitude. So that's the affective part, and what you also learn is how to deal with difficult emotions, stress, anger, jealousy, and so on. So usually what we do is either we suppress it, no, I don't have it, I don't feel it. On the long run, it makes you ill. Or we dump it. The other is stupid. It's his fault, her fault. So that's the way we usually act out on difficult emotions. And so we are training or like getting conscious. It's like, oh, I'm feeling anger, not doing anything with it, not suppressing, not dumping, just being with it. And it disappears. But it's not easy. It sounds super easy. You know, but it's not, but we train that every day. So, and then there is a third module, it's called perspective. And this is more like this kind of cognitive route. And this is much more gaining like a bird's eye perspective on who you are, on aspects of your self-personality and how that's constructing your reality every day. And on your mind. What is your mind telling you all the time, you know, like a radio station? You are not good enough, you should now stop talking, they are certainly really bored. And so this is what we call the inner judge. Oh my God, and I think they thought she's really crazy, and what is she talking and what's she doing on this conference? She doesn't even work with digital media and so on. So that would be, but that would be like a inner judge in myself talking. And people might think, oh, I don't have that, but if you start listening to your inside, you often have these voices which are much, much more influencing your actions than you're aware. Usually you're not even aware that this is going on. But then there are also nice voices, you know, like gypsy or whatever. So we work with that. I can't, you know, it's such a big program. And to your second question, it's really well designed. So it's like one builds on the other, so that you slowly get it always deeper level. And how do we want to get that out in society? This is the next step. We want to build an institute and we want to make it available for society. We have teachers, we have the program. Now we need somehow
Do you need funding for that, or is there a way to get funding?
If you have a little bit, I guess we will need some, because Yes, for scientists it's very difficult, you know, we don't ask for funding in that way, so we don't, it's like cute. Yeah, in the moment where this institute exists, but it doesn't exist. So at the moment you can sign up as a scientist participant. You can sign up when you want to do science with it too, but not yet as a program, you know, and so this is the next step. We just want to make it available so people can sign up. You know, like businesses can ask for it, we can send teachers and put it into, that's the next step. Yeah.
So you need angel
it's just
money.
about happening, but it's like we need some more concrete, you know, you call it business plan, I think. Business plan, yeah. Just like you should do that.
I have a very quick last question. I was wondering, in your research, have you found a difference between generations, and also have you found a difference between people who use technology more or less for the amount of compassion they show at baseline, as well as how receptive they are to compassion training?
So these are all excellent questions, and given that it's so young, our research, we have not looked at all these interactions. So what we will be able, at the research project, given that we have 200 people between the age of 20 and 55, we can look at age age effects, Do younger people learn quicker? The people who, within 1 month of opening our web platform, when we started recruiting, it was only Berlin and Leipzig, 2,700 clicked. So the need is huge, and there were a lot of people above 60, and they said, please take us in. So I'm sure that a lot of people who are beyond 60, 70 are actually really interested also to do something for their own, like I think sanity. We could not include them for technical reasons in the study, but it will be an interesting question. Now with the internet use, I don't know, because it's just, beginning, so we have to do a lot of more research. It's first steps, yeah. So, I think we are done. So if there are some burning questions, I'm here, so you can come. Thank you very much.